Hello, everyone. I want to apologize first that we had a YouTube live. There was some issues at the StreamYard, which I have run into in the past as well. So we will. I'm just recording this on Zoom, and then I'll post it on the YouTube channel. We have again Dr. Masha Maeli with us, a postdoc research fellow at University of Maryland in radiology department. So, Dr. Maeli, can you please briefly summarize what we had already discussed there?
Right. So we talked about the fact that so I graduated from medical school in Tehran. I started looking for a position. I decided to go with the ads rather than randomly reaching out to PIs because I think it's more effective because at least you're sure that there is enough funding in this lab for postdoc. And then that's how I found my position, and I started more than a year ago. And I've been working in radiology ever since, mostly on databases.
Okay. So the million dollar question is that a lot of students which they find, let's say from especially from Pakistan and India, because in most of the medical schools in Pakistan and India, there's not a lot of like research going on at the medical school level. So either they are doing it somehow internationally with someone, or maybe someone in the country is doing it. So how can they navigate that issue during the med school? Because in India, Pakistan, unlike Iran, they can take their exams and everything.
Right, I see. So I think there are so many online courses that they can train themselves. And especially, I think with radiology, it's really important to have a solid background in biostats. And there's so many courses and books about it. So I think for medical students, it's really important for them to spend some time figuring the basic statistics. And if they're really interested in joining a lab that's working on big data, they also need to go further to learn longitudinal analysis and things like that. And I think this is really attractive to PIs because there's so few people with medical backgrounds who also have a solid understanding of biostats. So when you claim that, and of course you should be able to support that in your CV. So you can claim that you're very good with biostats, you know how to work with R and everything, but you also have to have something to show for it. So at least like two, three papers that you've actually used what you've learned and managed to publish the paper. I think this will be really attractive to so many PIs. And it's pretty convincing that besides meta school, you've managed to learn all this and then you've also worked with people and published. And in terms of data, I've mentioned this before. So there are so many online data sets and databases that people can reach out. They don't have to have their own data. They can reach out to these. Like I think my first paper was based on a Chinese database. So we're a Chinese data set. So we reached out to the team. It was a cohort there, and we asked for the data, and they replied. They shared the data. So it is pretty common to do that, and people are actually willing to share the data with you, and then you can cite their work, you can collaborate with them, you can include them as co-authors. There are all sorts of ways that you can play win-win game with other research teams across the world if you don't have a good data in your own country. And in terms of trainings, yeah, I think there's so many online courses that it shouldn't be that hard to for meta students to train themselves, especially with the generative AIs. Like they can literally ask any questions they have, and they'll get great training and mentorship.
All right. So now, when you said that you can reach out to some international cohorts like you did to China, is there like a specific, again, very basic layman question? What is like a specific way? Can you reach out individually, or it has to be like an institution? And are there like portals where you can reach out to them?
No, it's just individually. So if you're like, so something that you have to do is being really up to date in terms of reading the papers in the field you're interested in. And then when you're going through all these papers, you might notice that these people have collected a big data, but they've only published like this paper on this data. And you might have an idea on like, so why they didn't do this analysis, or they could also like do this. So that's when you can reach out and mention that I read your paper, it was really interesting, but I think you can also do some other things with it. And of course, you don't want to share everything because you never know how this is going to go, but you can give them a hint about something you're interested in doing with the data they've already collected. And then you can offer different things, like you can offer co-authorship, you can author, like all sorts of things, citing their papers, of course, and the data. But besides that, this is for local data sets, like a small group who've collected the data, and like you can reach out to ask for working on the data. But now we have so many databases that you can just submit an official proposal, and that can also be done individually. So it's a pretty standard template. You have to discuss what you're willing to do with the data. So they want to know what your plans are, and then it's usually annual. So you have to renew your data access agreement or like whatever you've signed. But it's pretty easy to get access to the data as long as you have a research question.
So, and you said there are recognized international databases. Can you name some of them where people can
Yeah.
reach out to?
Yeah, like ADNI is something I've been working with. It's for Alzheimer's disease. So it stands for Alzheimer's Disease Neuroimaging Initiative. And then also PPMI is for Parkinson's disease. And then there are also some local ones like UCLA has released the data. I think on Open Neuro, people can find imaging data and can work with, and so many other things. So things I know they're all in neuroimaging, but I'm sure there are other databases I've heard about databases for autism and other disorders as well.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Dr. Sedino, for joining us. We apologize for the connection issues. So, Dr. Sedino, we were briefly talking about the same things Dr. Maili was summarizing. Can you also now please briefly summarize your role with Colombia Psychiatry, your lab?
Yeah, basically, I'm working right now I'm working in different projects because I'm a senior staff associate. So I have to basically help everybody with their project, but also have my own, not only as a postdoctoral research fellow, like normally they just have their project. So currently, I have to, right now, I'm working in a project about the clozapine and the dopaminergic neurons. But also I'm working with the electroencephalography and the rats, the mice, that improves the motor symptoms in Parkinson's disease and also depression. Um, I have to take care of the mice. I have to do the data analysis, the coding, the immunofluorescence, and also sometimes help with the cultures of the cells.
And then you also, did you start like on a B1 visa while you were here and then they
Yeah.
transitioned you?
Yes, that's what I was explaining. I started in the lab as a research volunteer. I was in a B1, B2 visa. Um, and then I was transitioned to a J1.
Okay. And were you able to do it while you were here or you had to go back to your country to do it?
I had to go back to my country to do it.
Okay, understandable. Dr. Mailey, you were making a really good point in terms of the green card. Can you please briefly describe that, even if you are doing so? Because my understanding is if you are doing you're working on a J1 visa, then of course that the waiver rule also applies. But you were telling us prior to we got disconnected that there are certain timeline, there are certain ways you can bypass that. So can you please briefly describe that timeline and approach?
So I know there are a lot of differences for the whole green card process depending on your country of origin. So it's good to discuss this with a lawyer, of course. But just like from my own experience, what I've heard was that it's good to wait for 6 months and then you can discuss with lawyers and apply for a petition. So that's what I did, and I applied for EB2 because so at the time I had like 30 papers and like 300 or so citations, and that was so my lawyer recommended that like going for EB2 is the safer option, and that's what I did. But if you have more than 50 papers, like more than 500 citations, you can also try going for EB1, which is much faster. You can get your green card almost immediately, like over a week or two. But with the EB2, it'll take a while. So for me, for the I-140, it took 2 months to get the approval. And then after that, so I'm just waiting for the next step. So a few things you need to have in mind is that just make sure you discuss everything with your lawyers and with your university, the international office, to see like if you're following through with everything.
So now, again, currently the status, do you have that EAD where, like, let's say, even if you start residency, you would not require a visa even during the process?
I'm not sure about that. I'm still waiting for filing the I-485, so I
Okay,
haven't
I
done
understand.
that. So I'm not sure about that.
I
But
understand because the adjustment of status and EAD gets along with 485. So you were
yeah.
saying that with EB1, one can get it like within a few weeks. That's for
So I know that so from what I know is besides people from China and India, for the rest of the world, the status is current. So technically you can get it immediately for
okay.
yeah.
All right. Okay. Dr. Sedino, my question to you is that when you were in your country, Ecuador, at that time, did you try to reach out to people for research positions like emails or anything like that?
Yes. Yes, I tried to do that. I was not successful, honestly. Like people used to say to me, like just send emails and like someone is gonna reply to you. Yeah, some people reply to me, but most of them ask me that they wouldn't be able to sponsor me a visa. So I was not able to get those positions because of that. So that was the reason that I decided to volunteer. Uh, Through networking, I met the lab, and then I just decided to do my best during those months. And then they were the ones who told me, Romy, we want to sponsor you a visa.
Okay. So when you were from your country, you were applying, did you have like some research skills or publications to back your CV up?
Yeah. Yes, I used to have like couple of publications, not a lot, but yeah, I had. But like I said, I'm currently working in original research, which I didn't have the opportunity to do in my country, uh, because it doesn't exist there. But I learned a lot really fast during those months of volunteering that they decided to give me that.
Riley, you were talking about some skills. So my understanding is, of course, biostat skills, and we can do online courses. So my one question would be if in your opinion, some good online courses for longitudinal studies for biostats, and then I think some of the softwares, I think if you can name them, I know one of them like SPSS, of course, Microsoft Word and Excel skills. And then I think you or Dr. Sedino were mentioning some coding skills. So can you briefly summarize some of these
I
things?
think the basic ones are Python and R. Every single lab that does original research, you need to know Python and R like pretty well. Um, the other ones, like Red Cap and the other, it's basically additional, but you need to know coding.
Dr.
Yeah.
Maili?
Yeah, I agree. So it depends on the lab, but R is pretty basic. So I don't use Python, I only use R, but you do have to know at least one coding language. So if you're very good with either of them, you should be good to go. And also it depends on the lab culture. So in our lab, everybody uses R. So when we are like checking each other's work and scripts, you have to be able to understand what other people have done. So this is something that depends on the lab. So in our lab, people who check our work, they use ours. So that's what we use. And I think SPSS is pretty old school now. So it's not very common to use it in radiology. But again, I've seen people who have no background in coding, they can't use R, and they found fully funded positions in radiology. So I don't want I'm just be discouraged that if you don't know how to do this, there's like no way for you to find a position. And also it depends on the lab. So our lab is like we work with a big database. Like we work with the data from 12,000 kids from America. So we do have to be able to handle the data. But some people who work with like wet labs or animal research labs, you don't have to be able to work with R in order to handle like mouse models. That's my understanding. I've never done animal research. So I think although these all these things are pretty important and it's really good to have them on your CV, it's not absolutely crucial.
Okay. All right. And then if you can guide us, the students who are listening or applicants, that what would be like an appropriate way, like any specific wordings, and Dr. Mariam shared a format with me, which I will put it as a picture during the video. If you could also provide some feedback regarding that.
You mean like for your CV and your cover letter?
Yep, yep. So not CV, but how would you word your email when you are trying to reach out for a position?
So as I said, because I went through the ads, so in those ads, PIs specify what they're looking for.
Okay.
Very helpful. For example, they say that I'm looking for with a medical background or equivalent degrees who is able to like do this and that. So it's really important to incorporate that in your email. Like if the PI has a specified that I'm looking for someone who can do like big data analysis, if you have to specify if you can do that, and if you can't, you should why you think still you're a good fit for this position, although you can't.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
also, it's very helpful to go through the papers that are published in that lab and mention that. Like,
Okay.
and make sure, and I think it's really important to make sure that you figure, because PIs are in so many papers each year, and they're not necessarily their main line of work. So you have to make sure that the paper you found is like one of the main streams in that lab. And then you can work around that. Like mention that I'm really interested in this. I have a good understanding of this. And you have to clarify why you're gonna be helpful in the lab. Like how it's not just about. So something that I think is very tricky is when people think that because a postdoc position is technically a trainee position, they can mention that I'm interested in learning this and that. It's not enough. You should also say how you can contribute to the lab.
I understand. All right. And Dr. Citino, what has been your experience in regards to like sending? So I think Dr. Maeli was specific in her research that she saw the PI's ads or advertisements, but I think you had tried sending emails. So did you like go to their websites of universities and saw who was doing research? How did you approach that?
Yeah, I think I was doing like a broad search, and I was going through every university I saw that could be potential, the place that I could be helping with. But I feel like the best approach that you can do, I would just say it in points. Like I would say like the first is define your research interest. Like what do you want to do? Second, identify your potential advisors because for example, I had in my past that I presented in a conference of Parkinson and psychiatric manifestations, and my PI currently works on that. So whenever I got my interview for the research volunteer position, I mentioned that, and he was like, "Yeah, that's what we do in this lab." Third of all, I would say networking. Networking for me was the main thing because I started in Colombia as a clinical observer. So there is like, if people is interested in psychiatry, there is a famous clinical observership from Colombia. I started there.
And my sorry to interrupt, but my understanding is like you have to pay like $2,000 for that. Is that
Yes,
true?
yes. I was there. I was doing my clinical observership there, and once a week we need to go to the research building to receive kind of conferences. So in these conferences, I was making like doing networking, like meeting people. You can find there the people from the labs, and I was telling my interest if there is any lab research position that I could do. At first, I was not lucky, but making questions and doing more networking, I was able to find this lab. Also, I would say try your best to build a strong CV. Like all the things that you have done, papers, publications, conferences, posters, everything that you have. Also, if you, for example, I mentioned that I have my ECFMG certification, and they say, oh, probably we're going to do some kind of research in humans. Maybe we will need someone with that ECFMG certification in the future. Also, I would say do a cover letter that you see that it fits with the lab objectives. Also, they are going to ask you, what would you like to do some research? Because that's like the academia. Like you need a research proposal. Also, you need letters of recommendations, like any place. And I would just, those are my few tips in there.
We have two speakers who have had different approaches. So Dr. Sedino seems like started working as an observer. She made her way as a volunteer research position, and Dr. Maeli started directly from Iran, had some research background and skills, and then she directly applied to a position. So that's a really good, because I think what over the years, especially I can say about Pakistani applicants, I think over the years what they have faced difficulty with is, so visa is a big issue. I personally have suffered from that. So visa is a big issue. A lot of time what people say is that, oh, there is so difficult to get a paid position, because what they would say that why would a PI sponsor a visa, J1 visa, and give you 70, $80,000 a year when that PI can hire someone from US? So Dr. Mailey, what's your understanding of that concept, or that myth, I would say?
Right. So that's a very good point, and I think the answer is well, you should be better than other options that the PI has. I've seen people who were hired only because they were here and they were available. So it's really easy to go from one department to another department at same university, because much less paperwork and it's really easy. So I've seen people who were hired for a job with less qualifications than other applicants who were far away, and it required a lot of paperwork to bring them here. So that's a valid point. But still, most, at least in our department, I think almost all postdocs are international from other countries. So I think people from other countries have already proved that they can bring a lot of experiences here, and they're just as competent or sometimes more competent than equivalents. So that's why a PI would hire a person. So it's pretty, I think it makes sense. Uh, if you don't have any skills, and especially relevant skills, it's really unlikely for a PI to be willing to take chances with you just to see, just because you're interested and passionate. Unfortunately, it's not enough. So it's really unlikely for a PI to take chances with that. But if you have something that's something that proves that you're really hardworking and you've already done a lot of you've done your homework, you know how to write a paper, you know how to do a basic analysis at least, and that means that the PI doesn't have to spend a lot of time training you. So you're already coming in with a good background, or as Dr. Sadino was saying, so she was already there, and it's important to show that you're able to work with the team. You're able to fit in,
Absolutely.
and you'll be able to play along. So I think you need to be able to prove all of that, especially as someone coming from Middle East. You really need to be able to prove yourself in those domains, and definitely English skills. It really helps.
Understandable. And I think another question from your discussion that arises is that what I have heard from some PIs myself is that if they hire someone from here, it is difficult for them to stop them for 2 years. So my understanding is it's a minimum of 2 years contract. So that again, my understanding, but I may be wrong. Now my question is, like, do you guys sign like a specific contract that it will last for 2, 3 years? And my next question is, and maybe a tricky, you can choose not to answer that. During that time, do they like make sure, have you signed something that you will not be applying for residency, or if you will not be able to start your residency? Because that's another question a lot of people ask us.
So a postdoc position is an annual appointment. So you renew your contract annually. So although so the funding my PI dedicated to me was for 3 years, I'm signing annual contracts. So like I signed my new contract a few months ago because I already completed 1 year. And then you'll have a discussion with your PI at the end of the year. And I think it's pretty the same everywhere because I've heard from so many of my friends who are postdocs. So at the end of the year, you discuss things with your PI, you kind of look back on things you've done, things you've accomplished. And then if you're interested to say your PI is willing to keep you, you sign the contract. So it can be terminated on both sides, technically anytime. On the PI side, they can give you 2 months notice. That's in our institution. I know it's different in different institutions. But in Maryland, they need to give you 2 months notice if they want to terminate your contract before the end of the contract. And then on the postdoc side, technically you can leave anytime. So legally, you don't have to, you can just say, I don't want to work here anymore and like resign.
Okay. So basically, they cannot like have you sign something that you will not take exams, you will not apply for residency, because that is against a kind of a myth which we all, at least I and a lot of people from Pakistan heard that.
Right. Yeah, no, that's not true at all. So I think I think you should be able to see that contract templates if you Google them, but it's pretty a standard. You see your salary, which is NIH standard, so you can double check that with NIH to make sure you're getting the right offer, and then you get all the benefits, like the benefits plus the annual leaves, personal days, all of that. So I think it's pretty a standard, at least in Maryland and Hopkins. Like institutes that I've seen contracts, I know that everything's the same.
And Dr. Sedino, what has been your experience in terms of like the duration of contract and any additional conditions for that?
Yeah, it's basically the same. It's an annual contract. Yeah, they made me sound like I know I'm recently new in this position, but from what I have heard from my other coworkers is that it's an annual contract. That's what my PI told me as well. And well, my PI knows also that my endpoint is to go to residency. So he said basically, I know that you'll be here until you get your residency, and that's fine, that's okay. But till now, be here and just like, write papers, do the experiments, like do the data analysis, and that's what I have been doing. And yeah, I don't have anything to add because she said everything that happens in Colombia as well.
All right. Well, I think we have had excellent discussion from both of you. I would request just last any concluding comments from both Dr. Maeli and Dr. Sedino, any advice that you want to give to, let's say, a medical student sitting in Iraq, Pakistan, India, Nepal, anything that you want to tell them that what they can do if they want to pursue the postdoc route. Any last comments?
It's just that because I know that like going through Twitter or other social media, I see that there are so many scary things out there, and people might think that you have to have all these qualifications to find a position, a fully funded position, otherwise you can't make it. And I know things are already so hard for international students, especially IMGs. So I just want to like the thing is there are so many labs in America. There are so many different research positions that if you've spent some time training yourself and you're really dedicated and in doing a position here, doing a postdoc position here, you'll definitely make it. You can find ways around it, doing an observership, being a volunteer for a few months to prove yourself. Or if you have already everything you need, you'll get fully funded from day one. I've seen so many people who are fully funded from day one. So it's just that, just do your work and don't get disappointed with things you see on social media.
Dr. Sedino.
I will break down in points. I would say, first of all, demonstrate that you have research expertise, like skills, writing, that you are able to manage your own independent research. Obviously, the publications, also that you are able to do collaborations and work with other people, because that's another important thing, is to know how to work in groups. Also, that you are able to write grants, because that's basically the money from the labs come from the grants. We do that all the time with the NIH. Also, what else? Oh, teaching to other people that you demonstrate that. In Colombia, I have always like students coming from Colombia, from Yale, and I have to teach them how to do cell cultures or how to do any kind of procedure or analysis. So if your PI see that you can help other people, that will give you plus points. Also that you can show yourself as very professional always at all times. That will be my last advice.
Well, thanks a lot to both of you. I know it's a Sunday. One thing at the end of the video I would say is that the discussion started. So my previous interactions with most of the people who have done research in substance capacity from Pakistan, and maybe I think it was my fault that I had that understanding that when you want a postdoc, some of the requirements, and ECFMG was one of them. So I think that there were some people very brave like Dr. Maeli who called me out. And again, I'm not like a very senior faculty member, but I have a fair amount of following. So what I have seen is people are reluctant to call people out. I think that if you are able to rectify someone in a very respectful way, like Dr. Maili did, like I also try to do if I see even a senior person mentioning something and I feel I'm pretty sure that what he or she is saying is not accurate. So I think that actually makes the culture of learning so attractive that we are in a place where we are doing positive criticism. So from there, we were able to I were able to reach out to her, request her that now that you have rectified me, can you please also part of the solution? So she raised a question and then she also answered. So I think that is one of the best things. And same with Dr. Sedino, she is very active on LinkedIn, and that's where I reach out to her. And same with Mariam. So I think that that's a really good culture where we are not only achieving our goals, but we are helping others to achieve goals. So I really want to thank Dr. Maili and Dr. Sedino for doing that. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.